Hey there, ninjas. Oh, we have a visitor today. Quit it. It's like digging through my desk. This is Bentley. Hi, Bentley Boo. Come on, bud. Come on. I'm busy. Quit digging around. So I have a question, or I got asked a question. Sorry, I'm super distracted by the cat. Who isn't distracted by cats? Cats are awesome. So I got asked a really good question from somebody via my Facebook bot. Come on, bud. And you see his Dr. Seuss tail. And the question was, does this person need a mega blender, like a Vitamix or a Blendtec or a Ninja? And I thought this was a really great question. I actually get this question a lot. And there's pros and cons of having like a really super powerful blender, right? So the number one con of having a really powerful blender is it's very expensive, right? They're super expensive. I spent $400 on mine, but I've also had mine for 12 years. Like I've had my Vitamix for a long time. So that actually makes it worth it. Like I don't know if modern Vitamixes are still such high quality, but the older ones are, and my Vitamix is great. A pro of having a mega blender is they do everything really fast. Like you've basically hooked a lawnmower engine up to your blender, right? And it like blends super quickly and it makes things really smooth. So if you're making hummus or peanut butter, that can happen really easily in a mega blender. But another downside of having a mega blender actually is that it can obliterate things to the point that they just fail, right? So I don't know if you've ever tried to blend something like walnuts or something really fatty, or if you've tried to blend, something else that will separate. So walnuts, if you overblend them, will completely separate. And you'll get a layer of walnut matter and then a layer of just walnut oil. And God himself could not combine those two after they separated. And that's just the reality of it. And you have a much higher danger of that in a mega blender. So I love my super duper blender and I use it all the time, but I still have like a cheapo, I guess it's not a cheapo, like a mid-range Oster, right? Like the Oster one that like I think everybody's given when they get married, with the glass carafe, which I really like. And that thing's great for doing really simple jobs, right? And the reason why I like the Oster sometimes is that it doesn't obliterate whatever I'm blending, right? So if I'm making, say I want to do like a hollandaise sauce, right? Because like making hollandaise in a blender is a really easy hack for making hollandaise without screwing it up. And I wanted to add some chives to it, right? Well, if I put it in my mega blender, like those chives just become part of the hollandaise, and then the hollandaise turns this like weird murky green, which is not good eats. But if I throw it in my Oster, I can just be like, and it doesn't obliterate them quite to the same degree. And like the big difference between a mega blender and a smaller, cheaper blender is basically besides all the features, like they have these crazy carafes that are supposed to create a vortex in the middle to like keep you from having to like, get in there with a spatula and move it around. But in reality, like the biggest difference is the motor size, right? And a faster motor means that the blades move faster, and the faster they move, the less margin you have for error. They do work faster, but that means you can screw things up much faster as well. And that's why I keep, my regular blender as well. And in fact, when I'm teaching students to cook with a blender, like I often don't pull out my Vitamix because not many people have them, right? So it doesn't make sense to train somebody how to use a piece of equipment that they don't have or can't afford. But also, I want them to see how it works in a standard piece of equipment where it's harder to screw something up. And in just a crappy Oster or whatever brand blender you have, I shouldn't call them crappy. They're not crappy. They're just less powerful in comparison to a mega blender. So if you're using a less powerful blender, we'll just call it that, you decrease the chances of you over blending whatever it is you're trying to make. Right. So that's basically the difference. So does somebody need a mega blender? So if you're making things like smoothies and peanut butter and you're blending things like ice, or you're blending like huge quantities of things, if you're making big quantities of soup, right, then you would potentially want to use a mega blender for that. In fact, mega blenders move so quickly that they will actually boil soup, right? Like you can put lukewarm liquid in there put it on a high, and then we'll walk away, and then like 5 minutes later, the thing will be like steaming, boiling to the point where if you take the lid off, it could explode and burn you from the steam expansion. So you got to be careful about that in a blender, any blender, not even just a mega blender. But if you're not planning on doing any of those things, if you're not planning on making hummus or peanut butter or almond butter or almond milk, or blending big quantities of soup, then honestly you really don't need a mega blender. Like, a lot of people have them because they like them, but I know a huge number of people that buy these like $400, $500 blenders, and then they sit on the counter and they never use them, and then they collect dust, which is a bummer. Good thing is that they keep the resale value, right? So if they're in good condition and you have like a Vitamix or a Blendtex sitting on your counter and you don't use it, you can just sell it for probably not much cheaper than you paid for it. So that's a plus. But if you're thinking about buying a mega blender, like, really look at your lifestyle choices, and don't look at like what you want to do, right? Don't be like, oh, once I have a mega blender, then I will be like living on green smoothies, right? Because that's bullshit. Come on. Like, if you're not making green smoothies now in your regular blender, then you're not going to make green smoothies when you have a mega blender. Like, don't use that as an excuse to go shopping. Like, spend that $400 or $500 on something else that you'll actually use and that will change your life. If you do make smoothies a lot, then it might make more sense to go out and buy a mega blender. Mega blender. Enunciation is my friend today. Alrighty, well, we, Bentley and I, are going to head out and do a little bit of gardening, depending on how hot it is outside. You can see him hanging out down here in my lap. Hi, bud. You can see my poor little shavy cat. You can also see my pile of cookbooks on the floor behind me, and the rest of my office. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about blenders or about any other kitchen equipment, go ahead and drop them below and I will get them answered. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.